No longer feeling like an imposter. I was having a discussion with myself during my morning commute, about how I feel about myself in relation to being female. For context, I took T for several years and had a couple surgeries. I don't menstruate, can't have kids now, and I have to take estrogen. And that felt like a huge wall between me and being able to call myself female because I don't have all of those parts or experiences anymore. I felt disconnected from the spirituality of being female, and I felt like an imposter. I forgot what it was like to be a girl. It was like I shut the door on womanhood and threw the key into the woods, never to be seen of again. Like I'd always be a neuter at best, and I'd never be able to honestly call myself a woman. But this morning, for the first time, a flip was switched in my head. I realized that even though I don't have every part a female has, every part of me is still female. My hands, my feet, my nose, body hair, my eyes, etc., etc. I was born with those parts being female, and those parts are still female. No matter how much I tried to change it or cut those parts out, that is what I am and will always be. And for the first time in my life I am able to find comfort in that instead of trying to smother and stamp it out. I am allowed to just exist as how I was born. Maybe this will help someone else flip a switch to accept themselves better, for the ways they've changed and the ways they are still the same after everything. Just have faith you will make progress with becoming comfortable with yourself with enough time. Detransition is the most difficult thing I've done, but it is what I needed. This is making me feel ill. I made a throwaway account for this, but I've been out as a trans male for 6 years now, and recently have slowly moved to he, they pronouns, and now they, them. I can't see myself having a future as a male, and I believe I may be a masculine lesbian, and my gender dysphoria stems from body dysmorphia. It's making me feel so shit cause I've put my whole family through this just for it to maybe end up being the wrong decision. No negativity please, I can't handle it at the moment, thanks guys. You're probably right. It happens a lot. But you're way ahead of most who just keep pretending because it's easier. The thing is, I've literally caught myself lying to myself by thinking, this isn't who I want to be but it'll have to do. Only good thing is I've only started hormone blockers, so I should be fine with detransitioning, if that's the route I end up taking anyways. Just dropping by to say that I feel you have my empathy. I can very much relate to this experience. You're not alone. You can get through this. This is not eternal. Bad days, feelings, thoughts and moments do not define the rest of your life. Masculine women and lesbians are people who defy and challenge the traditional system in such a hardcore way we still get socially punished for being different. Observation, passing and misgendering female to male versus Detrans. Passing. It took years of effort and being on testosterone over a year before I was unquestionably gendered as male, while it took only a month being off testosterone, with no effort to change the way I look to being called young lady again consistently. Pronouns. I remember how much it bothered me when I was misgendered, as female to male. It caused me so much anxiety to the point where it prevented me from socializing and making new friends. In contrast, when I decided to detrans, I couldn't care less if someone called me he instead of she, and some trans rights activists did it on purpose lol, since I knew that I am biologically a woman in every single cell of my body. And whatever people call me cannot change the physical reality. I think somewhere deep down in the subconscious all trans know they are not and will never be the opposite sex. I went through the same thing in terms of how I was perceived. I was so easily seen as female very soon after stopping HRT. Same thing with feeling comfortable in myself enough so that being called he has no bearing on my self-esteem, because I am female. I am, have been, and always will be a biological, natal female. HRT could never take that away from me, and neither can anybody else. Honestly, I think most, if not all, trans people know they'll never be the opposite sex, yes, including the trans rights activists that like to tell you otherwise. You know, the types that either claim to be the opposite biological sex or say biological sex doesn't exist, that penises can be female and vaginas male. It's all insecurity. There is no way someone can be that deluded. For me, I always knew very well I'd always be female. Transitioning helped for a little while, but simply being a man wasn't enough. I didn't want to be a man, I wanted to be biologically male. I can imagine transitioning might help a few people with gender dysphoria. Generally, though, I don't think it helps people with sex dysphoria. Not once you've been on HRT long enough to pass, but it doesn't make a difference anyway because your skeletal structure is still female, your hands, feet and shoulders are still female, your internal organs are still female and your past is still female. Oh, and everyone who knew you pre-transition might call you by your preferred pronouns, but they'll never actually see you as anything but female, so now you feel pressured to leave your family and friends behind and move elsewhere. It snowballs until you're dead, or B, learn to accept yourself the way you were made, as nature intended. You're so right, trans people know. A small, well-adjusted minority can acknowledge it, a sadly increasingly majority are in terrified denial. I was the opposite of you. I started passing after a month or so on T, and even now, 5 years off, I continue to divide opinion 50-50 happy crying face. Lost time. Sometimes lately I get super upset that I lived as trans when I wasn't, and that I experienced so much that can't really apply to my current life or use to better myself where I'm at. I feel like I lived an alternate life for a few years, but now that I'm back as myself I have no idea who I am. I have a different name than I did before, my voice and my body aren't the same, and I spent almost my entire time in high school and part of middle school as someone else than myself. I'm in college now and I'm constantly reliving the past because it's so hard for me to make sense of any of it now. I work someplace where my boss and coworkers, for the most part, assume and address me as if I'm a cis dude. It makes me so miserable that I have to take off my makeup before I head to work so they don't bother me about it, but still have to walk home after closing scared some man is going to harass me. My job in general makes me miserable, but it's not because of this. I've been having a hard time finding a new one and it makes everything harder knowing I'll have to keep doing this indefinitely. It's all kind of a lot and I don't really know what to do with myself. My friends and family are supportive but so unhelpful, because how could they be, and I can only talk to a therapist once a month. I don't know how to cope with any of it. I moved across the country when I was 13 and by the time I was 14 was identifying as trans and continued until I was 18 and realized I'm not. I feel like I lost all of my high school experience and a huge part of myself to this, and I'll never get it back. Part of me is so stuck with me back before any of this happened, when I was just a really young lesbian running from herself. It's kind of funny how I've come full circle. It's hard for me to exist like this feeling like I'll never be as pretty as I was before I went on T at 16, when my body was feminine and cute and I only hated it because it got attention from men. My hairline is less full now and it's fine because I have bangs, but if I move them out of the way it's visible and I hate it so much. My voice is pretty low and I can talk higher but sometimes I revert back to the safe dude bro voice I'd use with straight guys and I feel this overwhelming wave of sadness. That some parts of me will always be this foreign masculinized thing I only sought out for safety, not out of self-expression. I often feel like I'll never be cute or pretty enough for other femme girls to like me back. My wardrobe is kind of masculine still because clothes are expensive and I can't afford to replace all of it, and my voice and mannerisms are in some weird gender-neutral limbo. I'm so uncomfortable with myself now, if I can even call the person I see in the mirror me. My hair looks how I want it to and my face looks correct, but something about my body feels so off and I don't know if it'll ever be fixed. I'm sorry about your distress over your appearance. But I hope that with time you find more confidence in yourself. Being a lesbian is a tough position because you feel like you don't fit in with society's expectations for women. But you don't have to be pretty or cute to deserve a partner. And I'm sure you're plenty attractive anyway. You'll always be you, even if you had to spend some time figuring out who you actually are. Try not to obsess over fixing things. Think about your time as spent doing what you thought was right for yourself, given your knowledge at the time. You're so right. It's so hard to remember all that when society has kind of taught me the opposite. I really wish it was easier, ha ha. Why the lies around SRS? I had SRS years ago despite ambivalence towards it because it was funded by my government and I figured I would want it at some point anyway, so I might as well jump on the chance while I could. My results are pretty good as far as they go. I can still orgasm, aesthetically it's better than many, and I can have sex with it without too much trouble. But I'm acutely aware of the limitations and sometimes wish I hadn't done it. I don't blame anyone but myself for making the decision, but I am curious, why do so many people get incensed when it's pointed out that a neovagina is a different thing from a natal one? I see so much resistance to this idea, whether it's the insistence that gynos can't tell, they must be terrible at their job if not, or that it's transphobic to say that neovaginas are different, they are, from flora to muscle structure. Maybe in part, this is a money thing, but I just don't think there's enough money in SRS to explain it. Is it just that having the illusion pushed back on in any way upsets people? It's not that SRS is the nightmare that some people want to make it out as, but it's certainly not the same thing as a functioning vagina, and I wish people didn't try to combat the former argument with the latter. I think of Aesop's fable about the fox that lost its tail in a trap and tried to convince other foxes to do it. Misery loves company. Same thing kind of happened to me with top surgery. I was shocked with how hard it was despite many FTMs boasting a short recovery time. But it's been a year and I'm still bouncing back and getting revisions. The casual attitude towards top surgery has always made me incredibly nervous. Grafts are a serious and risky business, of any kind. I have similar feelings, results as you. Yeah, I like the silhouette of my body more, but I realize my neovag is less practical than when I had a dick. Dilating, although I only do like twice a month, feels like a chore. It just kind of is what it is. The longer I've been transitioned, the more foolish I feel about my earlier comments regarding neovaginas. It's very strange to me because the trans community continuously shits on phalloplasties, even in front of people who have had them, when vaginoplasty is not even that much better. Just less visibly different from cis because less of it is visible. But you will be literally banned for suggesting that it is different or that anyone may find it inadequate. We know why. Remember that the feelings of some people are very important. Remember that the ways that other people can cater to these feelings is also important. Remember that it's theft to be visible as a trans mask person without paying the dues of visibility. Navigating womanhood after living as male. I've been detransitioned for over a year now. Adjusting back to my natural body and its functions has been relatively easy, surprisingly. I still deal with some slight body dysphoria here and there, but it doesn't get in the way of anything. Life is pretty easygoing at the moment for how hard things could be. Lately though, I've been wondering how I'm going to navigate womanhood, especially as one with a trans history. My appearance honestly doesn't bother me much except for my now shitty hairline and larger forehead. I know I will probably have to avoid certain spaces because of how I look. I've accepted that for the most part. I'm glad more gender-neutral bathrooms exist. My masculine energy and essence makes me worry about how I'm going to navigate society. Eventually I do feel like people will find out or speculate that I am a woman and will flick me shit for acting so masculine for a female. I try to remind myself it doesn't matter what people think, but to a degree being so obviously different has put my safety and opportunities into question. I still have to survive and work with other people. When I see how other women are, though women come in many different varieties, I really don't feel like I can relate to them as a woman. Maybe it's living as a man for most of my teen years and being raised in a male-centric household that's made me think this way. I always felt different from other girls growing up, and I never really related to them most of the time. I wasn't ever connected to anyone in general except for my parents. Maybe I haven't learned how to be a woman, by that mean I haven't connected with them on a deeper level as being one with them as a fellow female. Does that make sense? I just don't know how to strip myself of my male past, having lived as a man most of my formative years and having had blatant misogyny drilled into me from childhood. I've learned some bad ways of thinking about myself and other women, and it's warped my internal beliefs about femaleness. Of course I don't have act in a stereotypical female way, but I do think I have picked up on some toxic behaviors stemming from sexism, and I'm sure that's going to negatively affect my relationships with women. I'm not even sure I want to be seen as a woman by anybody. The disadvantages and expectations are just not something I feel prepared to handle. I guess I could just say fuck it and ignore all the bullshit, but again, I'm not prepared to handle it. I apologize if this is all over the place, it's a very complicated place for me to be in mentally. TLDR, I'm a Detrans woman afraid of living as a female again in society. I don't relate to other women well or femininity. Being a woman and putting up with being treated by other people and society as one would feel like too heavy of a burden.